Today, we're going to unpack a career that's pretty remarkable, one that really gives us a kind of blueprint for justice. We're going to explore how one person's journey can show us what it truly takes to fight for human rights in the Horn of Africa.
So let's just start with the big question, right? How in the world do you even begin to advance women's rights in a place like the Horn of Africa, a region that's just so often defined by conflict, displacement, and really deeply embedded cultural norms?
I mean, it's a monumental task. But by tracing the career of Yusuf Abdi, who is a leader right on the front lines of this fight, we can start to see a very clear and strategic approach emerge.
All right, first up, let's set the stage for this fight for gender justice by getting to know a key leader in the Horn of Africa.
So what does gender justice actually mean when you're in a conflict zone? Well, this isn't some abstract academic idea. It means taking three very concrete actions: protecting survivors of violence, pushing for women's leadership in peace talks, and making sure that marginalized groups can actually access the legal system.
Now, if you look at this timeline, you can see a really deliberate story unfolding. This isn't just a list of jobs, it's an evolution of impact. Notice the journey. It starts back in 2012 with direct, on-the-ground protection work. Then it expands to strengthening government systems. After that, it moves into broader program leadership. And finally, to where we are today, coordinating this work across several countries. You see? Each step builds on the last. It's so strategic.
Okay, so let's dive into the foundation of all this work: protecting the most vulnerable. We're going to look at what a survivor-centered approach actually looks like in practice.
So, when we say he's fighting for the most vulnerable, who are we actually talking about? Well, the focus is on those who are so often made invisible during a crisis. People displaced within their own country, refugees, women from minority communities, survivors of violence, and also women who are just trying to make a living outside of the formal economy.
You hear this phrase, survivor-centered approach, and it might sound like jargon, right? But it's actually a really clear three-step process. First, you have to monitor and document what's happening on the ground. Find out where the violations are. Second, you provide safe pathways so survivors can get help, whether that's legal aid or psychological support. And third, you work to prevent the violence from happening in the first place, through things like community education.
But here's the thing. Protection alone is always reactive. You're always responding to something bad that's already happened. To create change that lasts, you have to be proactive. And that leads us to the next phase: building peace from within, by empowering women to become leaders and peace builders themselves. A lot of this work is guided by what's known as the WPS agenda. That's Women, Peace, and Security. The core idea is simple, but it's totally revolutionary. Peace processes are stronger, they last longer, and they're more just when women are actually included in a meaningful way. It's a huge shift from seeing women only as victims to recognizing them as absolutely essential agents of change.
So how do you actually make that happen? Well, you've got to fight on two fronts at the same time. Down at the grassroots level, it's all about organizing, demonstrating, and educating people. But at the same time, on the political front, you have to be campaigning, advocating with leaders, and pushing to get women a seat at the table where decisions are made. You absolutely need both for real change.
And it's that pressure, pushing from the bottom up and the top down, that opens the door for the next massive step: changing the very systems that keep inequality going.
And you have to understand, the stakes here are just incredibly high. This isn't theoretical. The title of this publication, it's chilling. It's a reminder that progress is never guaranteed. A lot of the time, the fight is just to hold on to the gains you've already made and stop things from sliding backwards.
And here's another example, another title that shows just how specific and critical these battles get. Even when you get a major win, like a progressive new law, powerful forces can mobilize immediately to try and tear it down. So the advocacy work, it just has to be relentless. It never stops.
See, all this advocacy, it's backed up by some serious analysis. His written work covers this incredible range. He's not just an activist, he's an intellectual voice, breaking down constitutional law, the clan system, and also sharing these powerful human stories. This research is basically the ammunition for all the advocacy work.
Okay, so you take that grassroots action, you combine it with that high-level analysis, and it all leads us to where he is now, and to our final section: leading a regional movement.
In his current job as the Somali region coordinator for the SIHA network, his work now covers 3 distinct territories: Somalia, Somaliland, and Djibouti. And look, 3 might just seem like a number, but trying to coordinate across these different political and cultural landscapes, man, that is a huge diplomatic and logistical challenge.
So, what does leadership at scale actually look like day to day? It's way more than just managing projects. It means making data systems stronger so you can actually measure your impact, providing constant political analysis so you can stay ahead of a crisis, and representing the network at the highest levels, like at the UN. And maybe the most important part is getting dozens of local partners on the ground to all work together.
When you boil it all down, his role is really about being a connector. He's the bridge between those grassroots organizations doing the work on the ground and the powerful institutions, governments, UN agencies that can create systemic change. He makes sure their voices are actually heard in the halls of power.
So when you pull all this together, what's the big takeaway here? Well, this whole career gives us a really clear 4-step blueprint. Step 1, you start by protecting the most vulnerable. Step 2, you empower people from within to lead their own movements. Step 3, you use sharp research and relentless advocacy to challenge the system itself. And finally, step 4, you unite all those efforts across borders to create a truly regional impact.
And that whole journey leaves us with one final question, right? What does it really take to build a more just world? If this blueprint shows us anything, it's that the answer isn't some magic bullet. It's a dedicated, strategic, and lifelong commitment, patiently moving from one step to the next.